Welcome back to Chapter by Chapter, where I review a book a chapter at a time to see where it fell apart. In the first chapter of Lightlark, we met Isla, the queen of the wildling realm, who spent her life held captive in a greenhouse by her guardians for yet unexplained reasons. She has been released from her odd prison to go to the Centennial, on the titular island of Lightlark, a realm cursed to only appear every 100 years, and the leaders of the other realms must compete to break their varied curses. It is unclear how this competition works, or how it could break curses. Isla steps through the portal, seeing a bright light that causes her to close your eyes. "Open your eyes," a voice said, dark and striking as midnight. I'm trying to decide what this is supposed to sound like. I don't hate it, but it's an overly flowery quality that kind of hurts my brain to try to puzzle it out. I think that may be a theme going forward. This is Grimshaw, the ruler of the Nightshade realm. He keeps her from stumbling right off the cliff the portal is apparently lets out on. Which makes me ask, why? If you're going to set up a portal, why have it let out on the edge of a cliff? Seems terribly unsafe for the sake of a bit of drama. Grimshaw, who tells her to call him Grim, is described as having a cruelly cut face, which brings to mind that he is terribly scarred, and his grin having a shadow to it that could become monstrous. Isla asks if they've met because there is something about him. He responds with a suggestive comment. She gets flustered because she's an innocent little sunflower who has only had chaperone dates. Isla tells us again how dangerous wildlings are. This is going to be one of those things that we're told and never shown. I can just see it. Also, I would assume the other realms aren't helpless. Otherwise, wildlings would be standing on their collective throats demanding hearts. Every 100 years since the curses had been cast, the island of Lightlark appeared for just 100 days, freed from its impassable storm. The rulers of each realm were invited to journey from the new lands they had settled after fleeing Lightlark, to try and break the curses binding each of their powers and the island itself. Each realm except for Nightshade, that was. Nightshades had the power to spin curses, making them prime suspect for having created them in the first place, though they denied it. This year it seemed as though Lightlark King was desperate. It was the first Centennial Nightshade had been invited. So, these curses have been going on for 500 years, and the person who is 1, the most likely suspect, or 2, most likely able to help, or 3, both, just straight up hasn't been invited. I can't imagine why the rest of you haven't worked this out yet. Grim guides her aside as someone else portals in. Are they all going to arrive at the same portal on the edge of a cliff? Is there a staggered arrival schedule? What happens if 2 of them arrive at the same time? Do they become one being, a la The Fly? A pale blue cloak crackled with the wind before settling against bare, very dark shoulders and muscular arms. The man's eyebrows were larger than his eyes, a sculpted chin, and perfectly coiffured stubble that framed his pink mouth. Azul, ruler of Skyling. For as much time as we spent on Isla's dress in the last chapter, we could at least find out if these 2 guys are wearing shirts and pants, because it kind of sounds like he arrived in nothing but a cloak of billowing. Azul and Grim apparently don't like each other very much and have a brief glaring contest. Azul kisses Isla's hand and admires the rings on each finger, each with a gem as large as an acorn. On one hand, this does give a good indication of the size of the gems. On the other, it sounds uncomfortably large for rings. You aren't going to be able to close your hand if you have one on every finger. Clouds! I've never seen a diamond that big. To Isla, it was just a rock. Pretty, of course, but nothing in spades ever seemed too special. Jewels were made when great power was wielded over nature, and over the centuries the glittering gems had bloomed beneath the ground of the wildling newlands, rising up, eventually blooming like flowers. It was difficult not to trip over some of the precious stones on Isla's land, which she only knew from text, and certainly not from personal experience. Well, it's a good thing they survive on human hearts, because their land is useless for farming. Also, it feels like this is something that should have been in the first chapter. Just diamonds on the ground that people are kicking aside. And, okay, she's right. If it's super common, it's not valuable. But clearly they are valuable to the other realms. In fact, Tara always said the glittering rocks were the reasons they had a steady supply of hearts. Thieves from other realms, foolish and bold and wicked, sneaking onto their territory for diamonds. Well, that's the weakest possible explanation for where the hearts come from. Again, we have no idea how many hearts it takes to keep one wildling alive, or how many wildlings there are. But even being generous and lowballing all the numbers, it's still thousands of hearts. A death sentence for taking rocks the wildlings consider worthless. And if your worthless rock is attracting the food your people depend on, are they really worthless? Shouldn't Isla be flaunting her people's wealth for all to see, hoping to send food her people's way? She gives Azul a ring, just as another person steps through the portal. So yeah, they're all showing up at the same portal on the edge of a cliff. The woman makes a rude comment right off the bat, establishing her as one of the antagonists and giving our special little sunflower a chance to show how well she reads people. She was trying to tempt the monster out of Isla, to show the rest of them she was nothing more than a bloodthirsty beast. Instead, Isla bowed. "An honor to meet you, Cleo," she said, nodding her head in slight reverence. Did she bow or nod? Is she nodding while bowing? How did this sentence get past first edit? This is Cleo, ruler of the Moonlings. She sneers at Isla in her gauzy dress, and unlike the men, we do get a description of what she's wearing. Cleo's white gown had long sleeves, like milky beams of moonlight, a neckline that reached her chin, and a cape completely covering 3/4 of her body. The skin Isla could see was so fair her veins shined through, blue streaks on a slab of white marble. This woman is a vampire. And I say that as a natural redhead who actually has veins that show through her skin. Joke aside, she makes a nice visual contrast to Isla. Wildlings are free spirits, dressing in gauzy fabrics and bright colors when they wear clothes at all. They are free little earth hippies. By contrast, Cleo is completely swaddled in white from chin to toes, even her excessive cape used to hide her shape. It conveys that she is uptight and rigid, the cold, distant moon to Isla's warm earth. The last to arrive is the Starling ruler, dressed in silver. We learn that the Starling's curse is that no one lives past the age of 25. This is Celeste. Cleo hates her as well. An old, uptight woman hating the young, pretty girls is a bit trite, but maybe we'll get an explanation. After Cleo is a bitch for no reason, they head towards the palace. The rest of the century, the island was encased in its storm, but now the clouds had cleared. So Lightlark doesn't disappear. It's just inaccessible. Can anyone come and go now? Where is it compared to the Newlands? Is it only accessible by portal? If so, is there more than one? Thousands of years ago, the island had been cut into several pieces, so each realm could claim a shard. Nightshade left the island shortly afterward to form their own land. Wildlings after the curse. The pieces that remained were Star Isle for the Starling, Sky Isle for the Skyling, Moon Isle for the Moonling, and Sun Isle for the Sunling. Then there was the mainland, where all the realms had traditionally gathered together. It was the Centennial's base. I am so glad Aster include the intricate names of the different isles, lest I become confused. This is, once again, treating your readers like they are idiots. There is no good goddamn reason to name each of these islands, especially when the names are that fucking obvious. And from an editing standpoint, this line could have been struck entirely. Even if, say, Moon Isle was named Serenitatis, it's not really relevant at this point. The mainland castle loomed nearby, set high on a cliff like a crown jewel, jetting precariously out over the sea, large enough to be its own city, which was good, considering the main inhabitant could not leave it. Not during the day, at least. Based on who has arrived from the oddly placed cliff portal, I'm guessing the mysterious person is the sunling, and our ironic curse is that they can't go out in the sun. And again, why is the portal on a cliff? Is this some power trip making the other rulers hike in formal wear to the castle instead of just having them arrive somewhere inside the walls? He, the sunling ruler, the king of Lightlark, the last remaining origin, with blood from each of the 4 realms that still had a presence on the island. He could wield each of the 4 Lightlark powers, and by all accounts, he was insufferable. I guess all accounts here are Puppy and Terra, and any other random person she met sneaking around with a star stick. On Lightlark and beyond, love had a price. Falling deeply and truly in love meant forming a bond that gave a beloved access to one's abilities. They could do whatever they wished with it, wield it, reject it, even steal it. Knowing very well how many people wanted access to his endless stream of power, the Lightlark ruler was untrusting, paranoid, cold. I'm going to need a flowchart for how all these powers work. Relationships in this world must be the most bloodless, passionless arranged marriages ever, which I suppose isn't so off base from European royalty. I wonder how long people live, starlings aside. We already have 3 rulers who are over 500 years old. Sunny is going to be older than that, probably by a lot. There was a random woman in Chapter 1 who was over 500 as well. Is everyone just functionally immortal? Unless they are actively killed? The birth rate must be almost non-existent. I mean, okay, it's not always necessary to explain exactly how the world works in minute detail. There's absolutely going to be readers who don't give a shit. And honestly, as long as the story follows its own internal logic, I'll allow some level of hand-waving. But so far, Aster is just flailing her arms and telling us not to look behind the curtain. Isla has some internal thoughts about how Terra and Poppy's plan, and then flips off the castle. Please tell me that the plan isn't to have this prisoner with skills limited to manners and stabbing seduce and kill the king, who is possibly thousands of years older than her. Nope. I will burn that bridge with time to cross it. Moving on. They arrive at the castle to a crowd, so yeah, they had to march all that way in formal wear. Hope the ladies wore flats. We get the crowd's reaction, mostly to Grimm, who they hate. Apparently Nightshade has always been hated, because dark and poison are scary and these people are inherently racist. At this point, I wouldn't blame Nightshade for cursing the rest of them. Isla tries smiling at people with mixed results. Some smile back warily and some recoil, and one lady covers her child's eyes and makes a warning sign. There's probably a metaphor here about racism and queerness. Both the hated realms are hated for something they can't change. Nightshade was created dark-themed by whatever force made Lightlark. Wildlings were cursed to eat hearts and be objects of lust. It is possible I am overthinking this. They enter the castle, and it's very shiny because the ruler of Lightlark is a sunling, and yep, his ironic curse is to never walk in the sun. They are each taken to different parts of the castle by assigned attendants. Isla's attendant is afraid of her. She's led through a maze of hallways to her room. The girl stopped in front of an ancient stone door. With about all of her strength it seemed she could muster, she pushed it open. Someone had managed to plant a tree right in the middle of the room. An oak with blush-colored blossoms and blooming fruit Isla didn't recognize. Its roots dug right into the stone floor. Ivy crept across the ceiling in a pretty design, leading to the wall her bed rested against, which was covered in leaves down to the floor. Okay, I had to Google if oak trees have flowers just to double check. They do, but not really something most would call a flower. Weird string things that make my car yellow, but not a flower. And the fruit of an oak tree is an acorn, which, thanks to her giant rings, we know she knows what that is. If I were to be nitpicky, I would say this makes Isla look like she doesn't understand the connection between acorns and oaks. But I feel more like this is a missed opportunity. This is fantasy. Just add the words, "it looked like," before "an oak," and suddenly it's a tree Isla's never seen and has no name for. It's little things like that that matter. Isla looks around and questions if the balcony will hold. As sturdy as the king himself, I suppose. Right. Isla knew that from her lessons. The king of Lightlark didn't just control its power. He was its power. If something happened to him, the entire land would crumble away, and every Lightlark realm would follow. That was why he trod so carefully. Not for fear of being killed, but in fear of someone stealing his terrible power right from under him. So everyone's lives completely depend on this one person. Not only is he king, but everyone, even those who have moved to the new lands, is 100% dependent on him for their lives in very literal sense. That is a hell of a lot of pressure to be under for centuries. Can I get a story about this guy? Isla comments how nice her room is compared to home. Girl, you lived in a goddamn greenhouse with its panes and doors locked with no described furniture. Anything is a step up from that. Celeste comes to her door, having no trouble, it seems, navigating the castle. The girls have a hug and a squee. Isla is apparently very strong because she kicks the stone door closed without breaking her foot. Obviously, they know each other. Isla has snuck the star stick onto the island. Turns out it's a starling artifact, even though Isla found it in her mother's things. But since both girls' parents are dead because of the curses, neither knows why. Isla met Celeste on one of her many forays to freedom via the Starstick portal. They became friends over their shared need to break the curses. Celeste, so she and her people could live past 25, and Isla because a realm that lived exclusively on human hearts for 500 years is now dying out. I don't think we will get an explanation for how any of this works. They have a little banter, and then Celeste leaves, ending the chapter. This isn't really a very interesting chapter. And it's not just that there is no action. There's no description, either. One of fantasy's biggest strengths is world building. You have this other world, familiar and strange. And we don't see Lightlark. Isla teleports in on the edge of a cliff. We get a ruler montage before time-skipping to the castle, then quickly shuttled off to Isla's room. This is going to be the main setting for most of the story, and is left a blank canvas. We get a brief bit of exposition about a storm and a castle, but the dresses worn by female rulers got more ink than the homes and the people of Lightlark. They're left as bare as the male rulers. For all we saw of the main island, Isla may as well have arrived inside the castle. Not that the castle got any more description. It's not given a color or what it's made of, just that it's absurdly large, set on a cliff, and apparently designed like the Winchester House. This is an excellent time to give a bit of exposition on the world outside of Isla spoon-feeding it. A mural or a tapestry in the main hall depicting how Lightlark came to be. A history in stone with part about the curses mysteriously broken or missing. Instead, we have Isla's running commentary. An untrustworthy narrator who has been a captive of her teachers her whole life, only sneaking out occasionally to see the larger world. This could be a chance for Isla, and through her, the readers, to see the world outside of Tara and Poppy's filter. But instead she arrives knowing all the other rulers and what to expect from them, and because she is a special sunflower, she's right. No one acts outside her expectations. So a chapter that should have set the stage for our story is left bare and flat. The point of a naive character entering a new world is to be a link for the readers to understand the world, to avoid the as you know exposition of characters who should already know the information. That's really all there is to say. This whole chapter lands with a thud. Thank you for your time. I know everyone's mileage will vary, so feel free to leave your thoughts.